There it is. Okay, so here in a few, we have Kevin Bailey from Idaho Nonprofit Center as our featured presenter. So we'll get to him in a sec here, but before that, we'll do some introductions. So name of your agency, and today's question, because it is National Mac and Cheese Day, I want to know, are you a Velveeta, a Kraft, or a homemade mac and cheese person? So let's start with Jason. You're on deck.
Hey, I'm Jason Nye. I'm the executive director at CD Aid. This is new. I've been there for about a week and a half, and I'm definitely a homemade guy for mac and cheese. And I want like the bread crumbs toasted on top of it, baked afterwards. That's the only way to go for me.
I can already tell that this is going to make everybody hungry, but that's okay. That's sacrifice. Leslie, you're up.
Good morning. I'm Leslie Johnson. I'm with the Salvation Army Kroc Center, and I'm definitely a homemade mac and cheese. I don't eat it very often. It makes me fat, but love the whole milk and all the cheese. And yes, that's me.
Okay, we got two for homemade. Wendy.
Wendy with Real Life Ministries Community Assistance Program, and definitely a homemade. And if you can put fancy cheese on it, that's all the better. And add some bacon.
Ooh, fancy cheese and bacon. Nice touch, Wendy. All right, Michaela.
I'm Michaela. I'm with Early Head Start, and I like all forms of mac and cheese. So I'll take it all.
Okay, the last meal, you're going down. You have one meal to have. Mac and cheese. Which one are you picking?
Well, the thing is I would probably pick the homemade, but I'm more likely to be disappointed with homemade because, like with Velveeta or Kraft, you know what you're getting, and with homemade, it might be good, it might not be. You never know.
Yeah. Kevin, you're on deck.
All right. Let's see. Probably homemade mac and cheese, although we, with three young kids, try to sneak some frozen peas into the mac and cheese, into the box version, and that seems to work well. The 2-year-old likes to pick out every little green pea, but that's another story.
Awesome. Vicki.
Hi, everyone. Vicki Isaacson, the Director of Workforce Training for North Idaho College. And I was with Michaela on everything. So I would have said all of them because I'll eat mac and cheese any way that it is. But yeah, that's a good thought that my go-to is typically Kraft because I'm not much of a cook. And so I just grab the box stuff.
It's consistent. You know what you're going to get. So that's a good answer. Donna.
If I had to choose a mac and cheese, I would take Beecher's smoked. And if nobody's had that, you need to do that before you die because it is absolutely decadent and amazing.
That's Costco,
otherwise,
right?
I'm just too Kraft.
Yes. Costco.
Yeah, you can get it at Costco. You can get it at Safeway too. It's like, it's out of Seattle. It is to die for.
Everybody has homework this weekend. Beecher's mac and cheese. Lisa.
Lisa Donaldson, I'm with Family Promise of North Idaho, and I am in the yes version of all mac and cheese. However, I can't have gluten anymore, so homemade is what it is.
Got it. Arwen.
I'm Arwen with Advanced Benefits, and I am a homemade only because my husband cooks. If I have to cook it, it's Kraft, but if my husband's cooking it, it's his homemade, and he will put Ruffles chips in the food processor and grind them up, and that's the breadcrumbs topping is the Ruffles potato chips.
Nice. That's a pro tip right there. For those of you that has jumped on, we're doing introductions, so name of agency, and because today is National Mac and Cheese Day, we want to know, are you a Kraft person, a Velveeta person, or a homemade mac and cheese? Rebecca, you are up.
Hi, my name's Rebecca. I'm from Mountain States Early Head Start, and I cannot have gluten, so I, would choose probably homemade. Although the box kind, I've been kind of experimenting with different boxed kind, and usually I don't usually go for mac and cheese. So
okay. Yeah, it's not for everybody. Let's see, Evelyn.
Hey guys, I'm from Idaho Housing and Finance. I'm the family self-sufficiency specialist. I would agree with Donna about the Beecher's world's best mac and cheese, the best from Costco. They do have if you go down to Beecher's in Seattle, they do have a gluten-free one that is amazing. They make their homemade cheese. So
There you go.
Can't compare.
See, we're learning so much. Nobody thought they were going to get on this call this morning and learn so much about mac and cheese. Karen, you're up.
Hi, had trouble unmuting myself. Sorry, we're having camera issues today. I wanted to tell you I am a homemade all the way. I'm a homemade almost everything in my world. But I also wanted to let you know, even though we don't have camera availability today, I have one of my teammates with me, another WIOA team member. Her name is Susan Norris. And just so that you all know, she is another person that you can contact her for any type of youth WIOA needs. Say hi, Susan.
Hi.
Hi, Susan.
And I'm not much of a mac and cheese person. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. Okay, Lindsay. We'll come back to Lindsay. How about Christine?
Good morning. I'm kind of saying what everybody else, homemade mac and cheese is pretty hard to beat. So that's
Awesome.
where I would be.
Shelby.
Good morning. This is Shelby Walsh with the United Way of North Idaho. I would also have to say that homemade mac and cheese is where it's at. Although I do really like the Annie's brand boxed version. That's pretty good too.
That's solid. Solid choice. Chrissy.
Oh, I think I answered earlier because
you already did?
On
My
here
bad.
also by phone because our system doesn't like Zoom, so I apologize.
Okay, so who did I miss? If I missed you, introduce yourself and let us know your mac and cheese of choice.
Tess Reeser here with Kootenai Recovery Center, and homemade for sure with bacon.
Awesome. Anybody else? Last call for introductions.
I am Christine from, sorry.
That's okay, you go ahead.
Okay, I'm here at NICGED, and I love homemade mac and cheese, but I have 3 teenagers, so I'm often just making Kraft or Annie's, whatever's on sale.
Carrie, how about you?
Chelsea should go next. Go ahead, Chelsea.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. This is Chelsea. I'm with the city of Coeur d'Alene, and I manage the CDBG grant there. Homemade all the way. And if you want gluten-free pasta that tastes good, that Jovial brand is the best. And Jovial. And they make a penne, which is good for the mac and cheese. And then gluten-free panko on top. And bacon and avocado, jalapeno inside. Dress it up.
Carrie.
I'm so hungry. Yep. So Carrie Cedarquist, United Way of North Idaho. And like many of you with the 7-year-old, I go eat a lot of mac and cheese. So homemade or Annie's, that's how we do.
Awesome. And I grew up on Kraft, so I'm gonna it's tried and true and it's solid. So Kraft mac and cheese is my mac and cheese of choice. Easy Mac as well. That's pretty good and fast and quick. Anyway, enough of that. Everybody's hungry. Let's get to Kevin Bailey from Idaho Nonprofit Center. He'll be sharing a preview of some of the soon to be released State of the Nonprofit Sector report. Kevin, it's all you. Take it over.
Okay. Sounds good. Can I share my screen? Looks like it can. All righty. Can you hear me okay? Mic check. Perfect. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Well, it's good to be with you all. I think this is the Alice Task Force. It was kind of music to my ears when Chris reached out. I was previously a CEO at the United Way of Southeastern Idaho in Pocatello, and Alice is extremely close to my heart in terms of that cause, that issue. And I think what we want to get out of today is really understanding that we're standing up for the helpers. And I think that's all of you. When we talk about advocacy, we talk about the importance of, what it means to have a voice in our sector. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I just want to open with a quick question. Can we just give 2 or 3 examples of ways that you feel like you're advocating currently for your orgs or for the Alice cause in your community?
Getting out and having community partner like conversations, building those relationships.
Fantastic. Others want to chime in?
I try to make it known at every chance I can that we need to be careful being prejudiced against people that are in the Alice population and people that are homeless, because everybody has their own story. And my thing is stereotypes in broad strokes where people just say, oh, they're looking for a handout. And that makes my blood boil. So I advocate for those people every chance I get. It's the what if you can't learn to fish answer to the teach a man to fish thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I think this group is probably, it's a little bit preaching to the choir, because when we talk about advocacy, we're talking about things that you all are probably pretty comfortable with, especially when it comes to the Alice issue. But we always like to, I think there's a real hesitancy in the nonprofit sector to really dive in and kind of go all in on advocacy. And so we have actually a longer training that we won't do today, but it kind of goes into the nuts and bolts of the differences between just general advocacy and lobbying. And by the way, lobbying is allowed under IRS rules for 501c3 nonprofits. There are certain limits with that, but that's a whole other training. We won't get into that today, but really the goal of this training or this talk today is really recognizing you all as the helpers in the community and giving us a few talking points for how we can lift up our own sector in our own work, so that, I think our community needs to recognize just the power and the importance of nonprofits and what we do, both economically in the community, but also to create opportunity for those who are in need, and that is Alice in the case of this cause. So yeah, just a little bit about myself. I was, as I mentioned previously, CEO at the United Way of Southeastern Idaho in Pocatello. I think tomorrow is my 1-year anniversary here at the Idaho Nonprofit Center as CEO. So I'm here in Boise. It's been amazing to be a part of a statewide organization, and at the end we'll have some time to kind of get your feedback on ways we can further support your community up north. We don't currently have any staff members up north, but we do have a number of board members up north. We have a board member in Lewiston. We have, I think now, 2 or 3 board members in Coeur d'Alene, Heidi Rogers, Vanessa Mose, and I might be forgetting one other. But so we're trying to be as representative as we can without having actual staff in the location. But so advocacy, I think I want to just start with a quick story. And again, my goal, I think at the Idaho Nonprofit Center, you can see a few of our 6 teammates there, but really my goal in this role, really, in what I do every day, is that nonprofits across the state are seen and heard as the change makers that you all are. And I think that's really important to me. I want to make sure that our sector gets its due, that you get your due as committed change makers in your community. That means access to a seat at the table where decisions are made, access to resources, access to the things that help you be successful in each of your organizations. Just to start with a quick story. So, I think just that theme of advocacy being sort of a scary word. When I pulled this little chart a few days ago in preparation for this, and it was striking to me, nonprofits didn't even make it onto this marketing budget by industry. You can see, not surprisingly, consumer packaged goods are at the top, tech stuff, all the way down to energy, which seems like they don't really need to advertise because we have to pay the bill to the one company anyways, but nonprofits aren't even on the list, right? And so I want to maybe flip the narrative a little bit. And if it's scary to think about advocacy as this big, like hairy, tough thing, what if we just think about it as marketing, right? I think of advocacy as, who can I talk to today to educate on my mission, right? And you do that through showing up to meetings, you do that through face-to-face conversations, you do that through your social media channels, you do that through your website, through the documents you submit to the IRS, all of those ways, right? But what if we just think about advocacy simply as marketing, right? That's kind of an approachable, intuitive way to understand advocacy at its most basic sense. And the for-profit sector does that really well, right? They're in our TV sets, in our living rooms, on our social media feeds, advocating for their products. But we are long overdue to advocate for the causes that we care about. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. I love this saying, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. Has anyone ever raised of hands? Anyone ever heard this? Maybe you've been on the menu too at some point. We were, back when I was at United Way of Southeastern Idaho, we found ourselves on the chopping block of some preschool development grant funds. We were ready to receive $6 million as a state. And we had this great opportunity. It was a great idea. And we didn't have really any of the relationships built with the legislators that needed to approve this funding. And so when the appropriation bill came across to distribute these federal funds through the Idaho State House and then to a nonprofit organization that was going to subgrant the money out, there was all this misinformation flying. I think a few folks probably kind of remember reliving this 3 years ago. Raise your hands. So as the money was supposed to be appropriated, we had legislators in our backyard in southeastern Idaho who were, spreading misinformation. We didn't have relationships with them, and they ultimately voted no. And so $6 million evaporated overnight. Our community got together really, really quickly after that, and they said, this is unacceptable. This is, dollars that the Alice families in this community, in this particular community was American Falls, a really like blue collar manufacturing farm egg community, about 25 minutes west of Pocatello. So they got together and we had 300 families kind of show up organically to a rally in the city park. This is a town of 5,000 people. So 300 people in a town of 5,000 people showing up at the park is like a pretty big deal. All 300 folks signed a letter and they were so passionate about it. United Way at the time, we helped kind of organize the rally, and we lined up some speakers. The local superintendent spoke. All 300 folks signed this letter and they were so passionate about it. They actually drove it to the State House. This was at the end of the session, I think 2 sessions ago, maybe 3 sessions now. And drove it to the State House to drop off personally at their representative's office who had voted against it. After the fact, we actually got visits from those representatives and they said, oh, if we had only known about this, we would have voted for it. That's a nice thing to hear after the fact, but it was a real wake-up call in terms of, hey, if we're not at the table, which we weren't, we hadn't sort of been prepared for that result. We were definitely on the menu and we got cut right out. So good, it was nice to hear that after the fact, but we really learned a lesson about what it takes to advocate well for something that our community needs and that really would have benefited local families. So that's my, having been on the chopping block and been on the menu, it was my lesson, I think, in growing up in advocacy to really make sure that doesn't happen again. So I think the opportunity really, and again, to dial it back a little bit, that example maybe was a little bit more extreme. It required a little bit more organization. It required a little bit more, power in numbers. But it doesn't have to be that every time, right? Advocacy, again, simply boiled down, it can simply be some of our marketing materials. But I think the opportunity, and this is where we'll get a little bit into the state of the sector stuff, I think advocacy can be the entry point that drives trust. So trust, I think of as the currency that drives all of our nonprofit mission forward. So without trust, we don't have anything. Without trust, we don't have donors. We don't have community partners. And trust really is doing what we say we're going to do, right, as nonprofits. It's the delivery, successful delivery of our mission, the transparent communication of where we've fallen short, the transparent communication of what our actual needs are and how to get there, all of that, right? That builds trust. But I think advocacy, because that awareness that goes into our missions, advocacy is that entree into trust. And trust, I think we've seen a lot of research that supports this. When you advocate, when you have that strong muscle developed in advocacy that builds that trust, it does lead to more giving. And I think of giving as kind of one form of civic engagement. And what we need and what this group is probably really good at, what we need more of it, you all are good examples of this, is more civically engaged folks that are at the table working on these tough issues in our communities and building strong communities. So again, advocacy is that entry point to get into that virtuous cycle of trust, which ultimately leads to strong communities. So that's sort of the theory of change, I think, and why advocacy is so important. So we actually commissioned a study, and this will show up. This is a preview of the data in the State of the Nonprofit Sector report. We actually asked Boise State University to commission a statewide poll. There was 582 responses from Idahoans every county. It was scientifically conducted. So we asked a number of questions around trust in nonprofits. One of the questions I thought was most interesting is what factors motivate you to give or support a nonprofit? So these are ranked here from most important to least important. So the number one factor, oops, hit the wrong button there. The number one factor is that nonprofit is an organization that supports an issue or cause I care about. And to me, that screams advocacy, right? Like, again, advocacy wins donors, it wins support. And without that communication of a cause, that's really what motivates support from the public. Obviously, that leads to trust. I trust the organization to do what is right. That is number two. And then that personal familiarity that builds trust, right? Those relationships that you have, that those electronic communications, those mail communications, events, all of those things that create familiarity, and that amplifies the trust and amplifies their support of that cause. So I think that's really important to keep in mind that, really I would almost trade out this first one and say, hey, organizations that advocate, that bring that mission to life, they build support, right? They win support from their community. At the bottom of the list, celebrities or public figures recommending the organization, not particularly helpful in many cases. It could be in some cases, I suppose, but at the top of the list, again, are these three things, which I think are so important to keep in mind as groups like yours move forward to build solutions and work towards what you're working towards to improve the lives of Alice. We also asked, kind of just baseline, like what are the current levels of trust in Idaho nonprofits? Idaho's nonprofits have a higher trust level than our foundations, than our corporate philanthropy, and then most notably, almost twice the level of trust compared to folks. And you can think of like some big name philanthropic, name the billionaire of the day who has a foundation. That's kind of what that element speaks to. So there's a real trust in the community-based institutions that exist right in our backyards. And that's something people lean on. I think that's important. We need to remind our policymakers that we are a trusted sector, that the data supports that we are go-to problem solvers and solution providers, and that we can partner with government, we can partner with cities, we can partner with business to get things done and to do it in a trustworthy way. So I think that was encouraging that this data came back, that Idaho nonprofits by and large are highly trusted, more so than some other big philanthropic institutions as well. Trust in nonprofits now versus 3 years ago. And so this is a kind of a cool pandemic comparison. I think anecdotally, we knew in the sector that nonprofits had earned the support and trust because of our response during the pandemic. That seems pretty clear. We had this sort of once in a generation opportunity to make good of a very bad situation. And we stepped up to the cause, right? We stepped up to the plate and delivered when our communities needed it most. And people recognize that. So just, 63% trust in nonprofits about the same, which is fine and great. 21% trust in nonprofits more. So almost a quarter of folks in our communities, we won more of their support. And just a quick comment about the 16%. I think we see continually in the data around trust and just in general feedback in terms of support for nonprofits, there's always this 5 to 15% demographic that just doesn't trust anything in your community. They don't trust nonprofits, they don't trust government, they don't trust anything. We've kind of started to, behind the scenes, refer to those folks as sort of the community naysayers. I would recommend we don't spend a lot of time worrying about those folks. I don't think we can change their minds. I think we need to focus on, and I think that group actually gets way more, we especially see it in politics, but they get way more airtime and they're filling up the Facebook comment feed. We just need to start moving on from worrying about them and really focus on the majority of Idahoans that believe in nonprofits, that believe in the institutions that we're building in our community and want us to deliver on those missions. So I think that's an important message. We get often sidetracked as institutions, as organizations, and trying to cater to the loudest voice in the room, which isn't always the majority voice. Donor perspective, this speaks to the Alice cause, I think, pretty well. Do you want your donations to go to long-term or short-term needs when you donate? Only 25% said short-term change. I think that sort of speaks to like the Kickstarter culture around, quick, someone's got a hospital bill, that's all good and great. But I think, a lot of what folks in the community are looking at is either a combination of short and long-term or really solutions that solve like tough, intractable problems like the housing crisis, jobs, healthcare, childcare, some of these really tough issues that take time. They take, maybe a generation or more to solve. And you all are a great example of that. The work you do invests in those long-term solutions, or at least a combination of the two. So what are some simple steps that we can take to advocate for our own organizations? I've no doubt you're doing all of these already, or most of them. But I can't say that, I can't speak highly enough about how powerful some of these simple steps can actually be for your organization, because a lot of orgs don't always do this super well, even though they're great organizations. But publish your annual report, or at least create an annual report if you don't have one. It doesn't have to be something you even pay money for, like go on canva.com, get something that's in 2 or 3 pages. Talk about your financials briefly, talk about your impact, what you accomplished in the last year, and send that to everybody you know, right? Put it on your website. The 990s are publicly available, IRS documents that you submit every year. However, don't make your donors and your community have to go search for them. Be transparent, put it on the front. Usually there's a section on most people's website that says about, and then you dial down the menu and it's financials and 990s, etc. Make sure your mission, vision, and a few key strategies you're working on are clearly communicated on your website. I think it's always difficult to go to an organization that I'm just learning about, and I go to their website and it's like, oh, I can't quite figure out exactly what they're trying to accomplish or what they're doing. Make it crystal clear, dumb it down as much as you can. If you need to rewrite your mission or vision to do that, there's some great resources out there. We can even point you in the right direction on, and then give a few key strategies. What are you doing to deliver on that mission, and how does that work actually manifest itself in the community? This one's huge. I think we don't put enough attention into this. This gets back to the advocacy is marketing and vice versa. Share stories and videos of impact on social media as much as you can. Obviously, that's where people are. If you want to even venture into some of the newer mediums like TikTok or whatever the next medium du jour is, do it, try it, experiment with it, but make sure you have at least a consistent presence and a professional looking presence on these networks. This is huge, and this is unfortunately an area where as a sector we still have a lot of work to do. And share those stories of impact, share your cause. Develop good impact collateral materials. This is simple one-pagers, things that are PDFs that you can print out, take to meetings. Just have it, and again, the barrier is a little bit lower than it was 10 or 15 years ago in terms of cost. Like you can produce a lot of these things in a really professional looking way with a third party for pretty cheap, or on your own through resources like canva.com. You don't need to have like an in-house marketing person to do all this all the time. And then lastly, as I kind of alluded to before, don't be afraid to have an opinion. Make sure your opinion is grounded in terms of what you share in your mission. Tie everything back to your mission. When it comes to Alice issues, if we had been a little bit more proactive in expressing our opinion before that preschool development grant funding, federal funds got voted out, maybe we would have had a different outcome with the representatives in our community. But yeah, I think, get your boards comfortable too with, and your advocates and your affinity groups, whatever you have going on that supports your organization, comfortable with maybe stepping out on a limb a little bit, as long as it's tied to your mission. And again, nonprofits can lobby. So if you want to go as far as lobbying, you can put a strategy in place there. And again, that's another training that we do, and we'd be happy to talk further about that at another time. I just want to briefly talk quickly about some of the high level stats. I'll send this PowerPoint to probably Carrie, I guess, or Chris, so they can redistribute it. But these are some great high level stats that will go in our state of the sector. So these are provided by the University of Idaho College of Business. They do an economic impact statement for not only us, but they do it for a lot of different industries every year or two. We employ 67,417 Idahoans in the sector. So that's 12% of all private sector jobs. That's the 5th largest sector, private sector by employment. So it doesn't include government jobs, but you know, we don't have a huge government footprint in Idaho, so it's a significant sector, right? And I don't think a lot of our policymakers know just the power and numbers that we have in the sector in terms of number of employees. And granted, a lot of those employees, I think healthcare makes up roughly half of them, but you know, healthcare is an important part of the nonprofit pie too, so we shouldn't discount that. Nonprofits generated over $8 billion in annual revenue based on this most recent report. Again, a significant economic contributor. Now, this is a little bit more nerdy of a stat, but $5 billion in gross state product value added. So the best way to think about that is if nonprofits were all to go away tomorrow, be cut out of the picture, totally go out of business, we'd have a $5 billion economic hole in our state. It would send our state into essentially a recession. I think there's $84 billion in total gross state product. So we're, you know, a little bit more than, I think close to 6% of the economy in that respect. So that's important. I think it's important our policymakers know, hey, nonprofits as a sector are a significant contributor to just those downstream economic effects through, you know, the folks that we employ, the payroll taxes we pay, the sales tax we pay on certain things, the contractors we hire, you know, all of those downstream effects are important. North Idaho specifically, $282 million in charity spending by charities, and about 3,400 or close to 3,500 total employment in the sector in your community. So again, significant. I'll pass this deck along. If you have, I guess my call to action is, as you're having meetings with city council or mayors in your community or local representatives, like, don't be shy about sharing and referring back to our report, which again is done by, the data is all provided by University of Idaho. So it's highly valid and it uses very common metrics for measuring these kind of things across different sectors. But remind them the importance of the nonprofit sector in your community and the importance for the local economy, because I think that's, the economy often gets, it's the first thing that gets decision makers' attention, of course. And then there's your value add at the bottom for North Idaho. Okay, so just briefly as well, our advocacy efforts at the Idaho Nonprofit Center. So a big part of what we do, not only do we provide training to our 800 plus members in the fold, you know, and most of our training is around 4 key areas. It's board effectiveness, nonprofit finance, executive leadership, and fundraising success. So those 4 key areas, but during especially the winter months, we're heavily engaged in advocacy and policy work. So we have a legislative watch newsletter. Maybe some of you have received that in your inboxes. I would encourage you to subscribe to that. So we have a bill tracker on our website too. So it's especially helpful during the Idaho legislative session. You know, a lot of these bills that are kind of in the weeds that are, you know, maybe they might affect things like unemployment insurance rates, you know, really stuff that's super boring, honestly, to keep your eye on. Let us keep our eyes on it so that you can stay focused on what you do best. We'll digest sort of how that impacts your organization and in some cases take a stance advocating for or against in terms of lobbying. And so there was some interesting bills that came out last session. One bill, I think, that was particularly disturbing and would have been a disruption to nonprofits' work and probably the Alice cause was around refugee resettlement. There was a bill that was really introduced in kind of a mean-spirited way. And it was really asking anybody who helps, whether it's a citizen group, a nonprofit, anybody who is engaged in helping refugees resettle, find new housing, whatever it is, find jobs, they would have to provide additional reporting to like their city, to their local mayor and county commissioners. even though all of that information, they have to actually release personal private information of those individuals that they're helping to those folks, even though all that information is already collected by the Idaho Office for Refugees at the state level and the federal government. So it was this added layer of bureaucracy with a kind of weird, mean-spirited intention of like keeping their eyes on what was going on at a super local level. It didn't pass. We advocated against it. Thankfully it didn't pass, but just stuff like that, like we can keep our eyes on that for you so you can continue to stay focused on what you do best. So that's our bill tracker and our legislative watch. We are building a statewide advocacy coalition that has representation from nonprofit executives from across the state, including your community. That will be launching in August, and that group's goal is to create a shared statewide policy agenda and really be a group that leverages the 20 or so folks in that group, leverages their network so that we can continue to drive actual policy agenda forward. And instead of just operating as this loose, siloed sector, really have some muscle and collective power behind the things that we're advocating for. So we'll lead that group here at the center, but it's really a grassroots network based from, made up of executives from around the state. So yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to cover today. Just really brief, high-level data on that. Wanted to leave time for questions too, or any feedback you have for Idaho Nonprofit Center. Anytime we chat with community members or members across the state, feedback is something we really want to hear, and what can we do better to serve your community and your organizations. And happy to answer any data questions too on the advocacy piece.
Questions for Kevin?
I'll make a comment. I work at St. Vincent's, and I serve on the chair of the housing subcommittee for Region 1 Behavioral Health. And I use your legislative tracker all the time. It's actually part of my meeting agenda. And I find it invaluable. And the stuff that was coming through about, landlords charging application fees, even though they didn't have the apartments available. I took that to our full board, and like they wrote letters of support, and like they got actively involved in it. So like I love that piece. And I also love the grants because that's what I get paid to do. So
yeah, thanks for that. We don't get to hear a lot of feedback oftentimes. We know people are using it, but it's just awesome to hear that. That's the point of those Legislative Watch newsletters. That's the point of the bill tracker. And the grant thing that you're referring to, for those who might not know, there's with your membership to the Idaho Nonprofit Center, there's like a $30 add-on annual fee if you want to receive the Grant Watch, which is another third party that kind of aggregates all the grant opportunities and gets them in your inbox in one swoop. So it's a nice little benefit.
Other questions for Kevin? Comments? Thoughts?
Are there, oh yeah, it looks like someone came off camera. Go ahead. Maybe not. I wasn't sure if Leslie, if you were going to say something, your camera came on.
No.
Oh, okay.
But thank you. I love learning about this stuff from the state level, and I'm learning. So thank you in terms of what we can do differently and how we can be proactive.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And again, don't feel like it's this big leap to go into more advocacy. Again, start with some of those simple marketing tricks that are out there. Website, social media, collateral materials. You can tell a really nice and big story just with those simple tools. So that would be the first place I'd leverage.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, Carrie.
Yeah, this is Carrie. I think I might have actually got it from somebody on your Southeast Idaho staff. But just pointing out that there's like big A advocacy and little A advocacy. And I think this is such a great way for us to be thinking about that little A advocacy, because you're right. I mean, so often there is this sense of like maybe a lack of trust if nonprofits are seen as like, lobbying, and we're nervous about that. I've got to get the board on board. And so this way of thinking about little A advocacy and just being at the table, I think is just such a fantastic presentation, especially as we're in this kind of July to November lead up to the next legislative session and kind of being ahead of things rather than having to play defense, like you mentioned with PDG grant, because we are a powerful force. We do, come in where, the private sector, the public sector fail our citizens or fall short. So just adding on to that, and love the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, good point on the little a versus big A. And just so you know, like, in case there was confusion about it, to be lobbying is actually a really narrow definition. So like, just like meeting with your elected official to educate them on an issue like Alice, that's not lobbying. You actually have to be asking them to vote a certain way on an actual piece of legislation that currently exists for it to be lobbying. So leverage that little a advocacy of getting out there and meeting with elected officials, just to let them know that you're in the community, that here's what you're doing, here's your strategies, make sure they know you're around.
Good stuff. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. We'll make sure to get this slide deck out to everybody that could attend and those that couldn't attend.
Yeah. One other just quick comment. We have two things coming up. One is sooner than the other, but Idaho Philanthropy Day, for those who don't know what that is, that's a celebration of outstanding nonprofits, volunteers, corporate partners, etc. And it's a statewide celebration. It's virtual, so we'll have that whole convening virtually with the whole state and recognizing corporate partners, youth volunteers, etc. I know we're still in need of more youth volunteer nominations, but if there are folks in your community that you want to nominate for either volunteer of the year, nonprofit of the year, etc., or corporate partner of the year, I'll drop the link in the chat in a minute here, but that closes, I think, on the 19th, those nominations. So love to see a few nominations from North Idaho. And then our statewide conference is coming up at the end of August. I'll put a link to that schedule and registration there. There's kind of a nice org pass. You can take up to 10 of your friends for one pretty low price. So I'll drop that in the chat too. But thanks for having me. I really appreciate being able to jump on and discuss mac and cheese and advocacy. Can't get two better topics than that.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right, so for those of you that are maybe first timers here in this group, welcome. So typically for our meetings, we have a featured presentation, and that was Kevin from the Idaho Nonprofit Center today. And then the second part of our meeting is we do a virtual roundtable. And so the goal objective is to share, maybe new resources that maybe your agency has, or maybe you've uncovered in the community, as well as updates from your agencies, or maybe a challenge, and we love challenges that you're facing, or maybe a win that you're proud of for your agency. And it's pretty cool that when people do share the challenges, oftentimes this group comes up with solutions or ideas or thoughts on how to solve maybe some of the challenges that you face. So there's really no order here. It's just who wants to go first.
I'll go first.
Thanks, Evelyn. Perfect.
Since it's a big thing, the Idaho Housing Finance has emergency rental assistance. It is expanded. The eligibility requirements have been brought in for the Housing Preservation Program, which serves Idahoans who live outside of Ada County in need of emergency and utility assistance. Among the changes, the program can now help renters who have experienced financial hardships during the COVID-19 pandemic. Previously, an applicant financial hardship must have been caused by the pandemic. The maximum length of time for assistance has been expanded to 18 months. Current participants in the program are those who have previously received 15 months of assistance are now eligible for additional 3 months. So if you know anyone who is needing a rental, emergency rental assistance, Chris will pass on this flyer. Just have them contact the number that is supplied, and they'll help with the person to apply for it. It is a big thing. So hopefully this will help some of the rental issues that is going on right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Evelyn. Who's next?
Oh, I'll go.
Thanks, Donna.
Well, we had our first inaugural housing resource fair last Saturday, and not a bad turnout for it being the first time event and competing with Post Falls Days and the craft beer festival, which was right around the corner. But I think a lot of people got to connect, and you know, we had one young guy come up to us in tears who was just so thankful and so happy that he was able to find a mortgage company that was there and represented was able to make an appointment with him to get funding so that he could buy a double wide trailer, and he had no idea that you could finance those. So, you know, the thing is, when you have these events, right, if you help one person, it was all worth it. The Croc Center's band was there and everybody had a good time with that. So it was a pretty cool, useful thing. I don't know if, you know, hopefully we won't have the need to do it next year, but if we do, I know how to do one now. So there's that. That's the big news. I don't need to take a whole lot of time, but that's my win for the week.
That's awesome. Love that. Thanks, Donna, for that share.
I have a couple things to share from United Way. First of all, we have our Community Care Fund annual competitive grant process is open. That will be accepting applications through September 30th. We always have technical assistance sessions, FAQs. We'll have one on the 27th. We'll record it. So the grants typically range, you know, up to $15,000. Falling into these health, education, financial stability. Because of some other sources of funding, our education grants are larger. So anything that supports access to education for student learning outside of school, as well as behavioral health supports, those are opportunities for additional funding. And so that is on our website. I'll drop the link in here. The other thing is the annual Day of Caring is coming up September 15th, and that is a one-day multi-community volunteer day. So we encourage nonprofit organizations, schools, et cetera, to submit projects or register projects that you need volunteers for. And then we match make with groups of volunteers to come out and work for you, serve with you for a day. So if you have any questions about that, you can certainly contact me, but it's a pretty great opportunity to not only get big projects done, whether it's organizing a storage cabinet or room or painting, landscaping. A lot of times this is a chance for like a big project to get tackled. So great chance to do that. And then it's also such a good way to show members in the community what you really do, right? So like Kevin was talking about, you know, show who you are and why you're at the table, and hopefully turn that opportunity into long-term volunteering, board members, et cetera. So projects can be accepted up till about mid-August. So get those projects in and hopefully get some great volunteers out your way. And I think Shelby would probably chime in too, just about our scholarships consistently available here. So we're really pushing our family scholarships to support childcare tuition costs. Those are available. And so we definitely want to make sure that as school is right around the corner, and whether it's before and after school care or 0 to 5 care, that families are supported with that. So reach out to us.
Thanks, Carrie. Who's next?
I can go, Chris. Leslie from the Croc Center. Really nothing new to report, just, you know, continuing to have our scholarships available for people wanting membership. Our well outreach on Thursday nights from 6 to 8 is still going incredibly good. Tonight we're having an ice cream social. Dr. Abate's bringing the ice cream, and we're going to teach people how to do ice cream without having sugar in it for those that are diabetic, and just creating more community. Our summer camp's going well with the kids. Everybody's having a lot of fun. And we are still doing our showers, just so everyone knows, $3 a shower. If somebody is needing, you know, just the general shower type thing. And we also have, you know, if they were to pay for a scholarship, it would be $14.10 a month. So I always try to encourage people, if they're experiencing homelessness and need showering, to apply for a scholarship, because the 5th shower you'll pay for your membership for the month. So that's what we got going.
Thanks, Leslie. Awesome. Who else has an update?
Hi, this is Chrissy from Navigation. And so we still have our emergency assistance funding, which we're able to help individuals with rental assistance, as well as utilities, and a few other things as well. We're still administering our career enhancement funding, and those items are used to help support, to either gain or support continued employment. And then we also have our kinship funding, and those are for families who are raising children that are not theirs, either relative children or kinship children. We also have our Kinship Day coming up, where we celebrate those kinship families. The service that they provide to children and our community is absolutely invaluable. So through this day, we recognize them. We celebrate their successes. We try to give them other resources and support. This year it's scheduled for September 10th, and it'll be from 10 to 11. And we're still working through all of the details, but once we get those, I will get flyers out to Chris for him to share. And if you know any kinship families, please send them our way, because we really appreciate what they do and want to get the support to them.
Awesome. Thanks, Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Lisa with Family Promise. We just had a graduation this week. Those are few and far between these days, so that was super awesome. Still have 2 families looking, and then I'm looking for a 3rd family to bring into the program. We also still have funding for our homeless prevention. I do want to just have a caveat to that. So the way our homeless prevention works, we are not HUD funded for that. And I have families try to gather funds to cover their rent for this month, so that I can do case management with them and help them through the next couple months. Or another way I like to do it is sometimes I'll take care of this month if they're able to get funding through Idaho Housing, because I know that one takes a little bit longer. And so I really like the idea of having that, being able to help them for a couple more months, because it kind of guarantees they'll do the case management, because sometimes once they get the money, they're done. So, and I really want to see people be sustainable and not coming.
Oh, looks like Lisa froze. Well, while she catches up, or her computer catches up, who would like to go next? I think Wendy, I think you had an update.
Yeah, I just have our resource list, so I will fill that out to Chris so we can get to everybody.
Wendy, we can't hear you, or at least I can't.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
I just updated our resource list, so I will email that to Chris so that if anybody else wants to use it, it's available. It's just a great one sheet, has a lot of the local community resources for when people come in. And other than that, I think our fall sports are open for the kids, and so they've got scholarships with that if people are looking for a low-cost sports program to put their kids in. And it's character-based, so it's a great program for people to, if they're looking for some activities for their kids for this fall.
Thanks, Wendy. Anybody else want to give an update?
I'd like to give an update.
We'll go Michaela and then Tess.
Okay. So I'm with Early Head Start, and we are still enrolling. Our enrollment has dropped, so we're just over about 50% of what we're funded for. So we are seeking families. So we take pregnant participants and families that have children up to age 3. And the Office of Head Start has just made some changes to our eligibility. And so now if we have any families that qualify for SNAP, they automatically are eligible for our program. And so if you know of any families that do have SNAP, then they just automatically can be eligible for our program. And we do have openings for that. We also have a category for homelessness or houselessness. And so if any families are experiencing houselessness, which could include staying with family or really anything that they're not wanting to do. So like even if they were living in an RV and that wasn't their plan, we can use some of those to make them categorically eligible as well. So we are enrolling if anybody has families that want some support.
Excellent. Thanks, Michaela. Tess? So this is Tess with Kootenai Recovery Center, and we have our recovery rally coming up in September. So we're starting to kind of hit the ground running and getting all of that organized. So we are looking for volunteers and people that want to participate in the recovery. Have a lot of volunteer coordinating out in the community where we're getting our volunteers out to help elderly and people with disabilities do yard work or anything, you know, that they're needing. So if you know anyone, feel free to give us a call. And right now we just submitted some applications over to juvenile probation to bring in some education and lived experience to the kids there, and had been invited here. So that should be great. And I think that's kind of what I have for updates today.
Awesome. Thanks, Tess. We probably have time for one or two more.
I'll share something really quick, and hopefully I don't steal Karen's thunder from Department of Labor, but just yesterday, I believe, or the day before, the Idaho Launch Program announced that they're now going to cover 90% of the costs of training for the approved programs for everyone. It was 75 to 90%, depending on a few factors like income and so forth, but they just changed it to a flat 90%. The other thing they'll do for launch applicants is they're going to open up access to all the trainings that are available through LinkedIn Learning. So a lot of short-term trainings and, you know, customer service, communication, and things like that are available on LinkedIn Learning. And by them applying for Idaho Launch, they'll get access to from what I understand, anything that's available through that platform. The library offers that too at no cost. So it is available other places, but it's a nice benefit to add that on. They'll be able to access it from home.
That's a great one. Thanks. Thanks, Vicki. We have time for one more. If you have something that you wanted to chime in or share, after this meeting, you can send that to me and I'll make sure that that gets out to everybody. So one more. Who wants to close this thing?
And give a brief update.
Thanks, Jason.
So I'm Jason with CDA. I'm still ramping up, learning the ropes of everything, but I do know that we have an event coming up we're working towards on October 13th, and that's our Chef Challenge, which our first one was last year. So we're looking to do an encore of that event because it was highly successful last year. So we are putting things together for that right now. We're also working with the Eagles organization to do a benefit night some point, probably in August, but if that doesn't work out, then we're going to shoot for November for that. So those are the things that we're kind of working on right now. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Excellent. Well, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate all those of you that were able to share resources, shared on challenges, wins, all that is valuable for the group. So I'll make sure to get out some of the resource shared today out in a follow-up. And everybody have a great rest of your day, week, month, and look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 Bye, everybody. Have a good week.
You too.